I'd just continue.
This is our monthly EDA meeting. It's Tuesday, September the 24th at 6:30. The roll call.
All right, Eichhorst.
Here.
Rothy.
Here.
Pendergrass.
Here.
Beedling.
Here.
Shippey.
Here.
Bronson.
Here.
And Gable.
I haven't heard if she's coming. Unless you heard something.
No, she tried calling earlier, but I wasn't able to get back in touch with her.
So we have the approval of the September 24th meeting agenda for tonight. Any additions? Seeing none, I'll make a motion, we approve the agenda.
I'll second it.
All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Approved. In your packet was the August 27th minutes.
I thought that all looked good. I make a motion to approve them.
One second.
Any corrections or anything? I had one.
Did you?
On page 2. In the WSB for the King, I'm sorry, Linda King, where it says.
Which line you on there, right?
In the second, about a third of the way down, it says currently planned R2 and B2. That should read currently planned R2 and B3 would be changed to B2. So the B3.
So it should be R2
And B3.
So it should read currently planned R2 and B3 would have changed to B2.
Yes.
Okay.
And I did talk to the engineer.
R2 and B3 would be changed to B2. Also, all of that would get changed to B2.
Yep.
Comes in with rezoning after it's annexed.
Question, the last time when we were here, he had a gift here, did he not say something at the meeting, or did he say he sat in the chair there, did he just decline not to say anything, because
There's a visitor from Cedar Woodlands.
I think there was so he lived here in Orinoco and he sat there, because I asked him quiet, so he never said anything. Because we have put guests in public input, and he said,
Yeah, he didn't make any public comment, no.
okay,
Oh.
he's right there, okay,
We're just talking about you. Oh.
okay. Okay, that's all, I thought he'd know if he
Oh,
said
yep.
something or not.
For everybody's awareness, would you just state your name so we go?
Oh, Grant Kosher, 1240 Cedar Drive in Orinoco.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay.
All right. Any other comments? Seeing none, all those approve the August 27th minutes, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Is it the 27th or the 24th? I'm gonna say 24th, the agenda
24th.
says 27th.
For today?
Yeah,
Approval of the August 27th minutes. This
Yeah.
is a September 24th meeting.
I was gonna say, I don't see what you mean. Oh, August 27th.
top of the minutes, it says August 24th.
Okay, let me check on my calendar here. Sorry, I just updated these.
That's fine.
We'll double check and make sure that we got the right date there. So for new business,
So,
commercial permits updates, I did just check today, and in the last 30 days, there have been no new commercial permits that have been either applied for or issued. So nothing new there. It does look like Dollar General Market is getting inches away from opening. I know this morning when I drove through, I saw that their dumpsters are completely full, so they must be loading their shelves up. So that's gotta be pretty imminent.
But there's a coming soon banner on the front of the store now, so.
Yeah, And then, Two Sisters is opening this month, or have they already opened? They already did open. Okay, perfect. Anyone been there for dinner or lunch yet?
Yeah.
I went there for lunch last Friday.
Good for you guys?
I went to lunch around,
45 and it wasn't too bad, but
yeah, I think I was there on Friday around 1 or 2 on Friday.
Good.
1:30.
it's good.
Yeah,
went there for dinner.
It was good.
I heard the chicken pot pie is pretty good. Somebody.
Parking lot's totally full tonight.
That's awesome. Hopefully it
See,
stays
I
that
seen
way.
it Wednesday last week, there must have been 75 cars sitting up there, so
Yeah, it's
about 6:30, so. Awesome.
high table, chairs have cushions on them. Not hard.
Nice.
Awesome. I'm not a high.
Stay there
top
for
table-
hours, you know.
Not a high top table person to start, with, but don't sit on a hard one.
Right. And then for the King Commercial Development, site update, I just wanted to let you guys know that, on September 12th, they did go ahead and attend the planning and zoning meeting. It looked like everything went really well. I know Ryland and myself both watched the meeting today just to kind of see how things went, and it seems like they kind of had the same questions that we maybe anticipated them having. So they seemed pretty excited about the idea. Looking forward to seeing more information, obviously, as we get them going, but it does look like that appeared to go fairly well. And then we're gonna get to our report review recommendations. In your packets, there is a copy of page 2 from the news record from September 11th. There is a article in there, community engagement results report is available to the public. That was from a press release that we had released regarding the information going online and to the public. So I just wanted to make sure you guys saw that that did print. And then in your packets, you'll also have 2 different small kind of sets of information. You'll have one that has Economic Development Authority recommendations on it. And the other is going to say 2025 work plan up on top. So what these are is the recommendations one. That is all of the recommendations that were made towards the EDA throughout the community engagement report. So that's not excluding any that we may or may not want to do. It just has all of them there. And then in the work plan, I have, yeah.
So this is from representatives or RADI?
Yeah, that's down at the end of our agendas for tonight.
Right there, just-
Yep, so that'll be coming up. And then for the work plan, what I went ahead and did is I went through and I put in not only what I imagined from our discussions would be priority items from the recommendations, but also items that are not listed in those particular recommendations, but have been discussed previously for other projects that we're looking to potentially engage in during 2025. Did everyone get a chance to review these at all? Okay. And I guess the first thing I'd like to find out is when we're looking at the actual recommendations, are there any that really stood out for you? Are there any that you guys think are in need of the most attention or highest priority? I'd love to hear some feedback, or at least we can go through section by section first. Maybe that'll be the easiest. So if we just looked at housing, in the work plan, we're looking at developing vacant residential property list, which would be able to help us if there's any infill lots that we could look at assisting with getting developers into, as well as finding out as far as what properties that are available, what they're looking to do with them. Are they looking to redevelop them? Are they looking at building on them or?
So you're looking at private properties or?
Yep, these would be all residential private properties. Because the one thing is that if we do have infill lots and the owners are interested in selling them, then we'd be able to work with some residential developers who might be able to help us with putting up regular housing just to be able to increase the stock that we have in the town. And some of those smaller lots, if they are available for infill, those would probably go pretty fast. So just making that type of a list, it really just takes some going through on GIS systems. It's just a little bit of time consuming, but it's fairly easy to do. And then the rental property assistance rental property assistance. So exploring different properties in the area to find out for commercial properties or housing properties, if people are looking to do any upkeep or revamping of them or redevelopment of them, because we do have those statewide programs that are there to help, especially when it comes to rental properties. They're not usually able to invest in like private single-family homes because it's harder to do that, because it looks like you're giving state assistance to an actual individual versus a business. But if we look at doing for rental purposes, they do have money out there that can assist us with building and TIF and all that kind of stuff. Because it's helping for a larger unit for that multifamily.
Do you have any idea what kinds of incentives you're saying the state offers?
Well, there's like a redevelopment grant that can pay up to half of a project. For example, right now in Spring Grove, we had a building that burned down, and so to redevelop that site, you just have to redevelop it for a different purpose than it was up before.
Mhm.
It was our old hardware store, now it's becoming city offices and apartments, and we were able to get $400,000 to put towards that project.
Who owns the property?
The city does. Well, the city doesn't anymore, now it's a developer, but
Is that what we're looking at, talking about, is our city owned lots and land?
it would be both, because initially it was, that particular lot was owned privately. And the city just took it on because the current owner wasn't looking at redeveloping it. He was just gonna take the insurance money and retire.
Hmm.
So the city purchased the property just to make sure that we had control over what was going to go in there. We just didn't want it to sit vacant.
And then they got $400,000 of state funds to recreate something in that space.
Yep,
Well, that's fantastic.
yep. So there's programs out there for it, just so long as there's housing involved.
So that was like, did you say that was a 50% grant?
Mhm.
That's gigantic.
Yep.
And I know we have city lots, right? We've talked to a couple about where all of our old septic or lift stations are at. There's quite a bit of city space. I mean, not to sound greedy, but it sounds like opportunity is there for the city to take advantage of the opportunity, identify some of the land that we have, and a 50-50 grand is ridiculous. It'd be a great investment. I don't know what we do with that. I mean, I imagine us selling, like in River Park, for example, you know, we could add 2 or 3 lots and a park, or 6 or 7 lots, or whatever in the middle there. But how?
Drainfield area.
Yeah, but how could we benefit from the redevelopment as opposed to just the sale of a lot?
It would be, we have to look at rezoning if we do multi-function of other than single lots there versus.
Right. And I don't necessarily mean plopping an apartment inside of River Park. I just mean, I'm just trying to think of what the city can do. Does the city need any government buildings, or does the city have any needs for real estate, you know, redevelopment?
So you're talking about property within River Park?
No. I'm just saying for an example that we have several chunks of land throughout the city that the city owns, right? And if
Yeah.
there's
Three lots, just on the other side of the fire department, where those 3 empty lots next to, kitty corner from the post office.
Yeah.
There's 1 below and there's 2 up above.
Yeah.
And so those are city-owned properties.
Sure.
And then
It
of
seems
course
like the
this
first
area
step.
here.
First step would be is to do this review perhaps for us to get a really good understanding of like what properties are there, which would include identifying all the city property, but then I would imagine we will start mapping over what grants or funds are available.
Yep.
Yeah, I guess it'd be nice to know some of those
Well, when it-
needs. It's opportunity, whether it's for the city or an individual landowner that needs or wants that opportunity.
Well, when it comes to overlay and maps, Sunny did a thing for planning and zoning last year. It showed an overlay map of Woodsview, of how some stuff can be redone, so maybe if you can find that, I don't remember what month it was from, it was either June or July, I can't remember, somewhere in there. June or July, it was in the packet. There was several maps of Woodsview, and it basically showed how they could add streets and. So you might want to bring that forward and see if that's.
P and Z.
Yeah, it was in the P and Z packet. I don't remember which month it was in.
It appears to me the 3 lots up here are pretty tough lots because of, by the time you're done with the setbacks on these small lots, what you could build there or have parking for is very limited. Because they're very small lots. I
Well,
mean,
none of them are listed as commercial either.
No, I'm not just saying is they're not listed commercial, but I'm just saying is for what they are, the lots. By the time you put something in a building on them and do the setbacks, there's not a whole lot of property there.
Well, no different than your lot over there with your building on it. They're 140 deep by 60 wide. I think the city has two of them to the south of me.
But you're very limited what you put on, because when I put mine up there, they gotta have so much green space and you have to follow all the things, which doesn't leave you all.
Yours was a business.
While I do find this really encouraging discussion, I think that this is gonna be probably better suited to discussion after we've determined what our priorities are gonna be. Once we know what we're looking at placing in some of these locations, then, and we have our list of locations, we'll be able to kind of take a look at what pieces fit where the best. But just to keep us moving along, yes, Jamie?
So with this review, has there been any studies done in Orinoco that helps us understand what type of like combination of housing would be appropriate as we think about growth? So I know that we've asked the community what they're looking for, but have we done a study on what would be the right mix of housing for Orinoco?
We don't have a housing study that's been done. That would have to be taken on by city council. I mean, I guess we can look into assistance with those, but we could do a housing.
Appropriate for us to consider, like looking in to see if there's any grants or things, or
There is grants for it.
Did.
Yep.
Because when I think about both short-term and long-term growth, that could help with us considering opportunities, which might overlay then with some of these other opportunities, but
Right.
I don't know what's the best way to start that discussion with that group, but maybe.
Well, if we did want to do a housing study, there is some grant money out there. They typically end up costing somewhere around 7,000 to 10,000. And we're able to get up to 5,000 from Compeer Financial to help pay for that, but the rest of it would have to come from either city council or just, yeah, I guess it would have to come from city council, because right now we don't have a budget to take it out of.
As a follow-up to that, I guess, have you been involved with other housing studies in other cities? So you might want to provide us a copy of somebody, just to kind of get familiar with exactly what is in the housing study.
Okay.
That'd be a great review just for the team to understand. I live in them from my other job, but it would be great for the group, I think, to learn about what's in them, what's included and how decisions are made with them and how they help to guide, the conversation for future investment.
Okay.
And align priorities, like you're saying, if the community is saying we want one thing, but there's a zero demand for that, then you just open up conversations about it.
Yeah, and typically for a housing study, we would just put up an RFP, send it out. Then obviously as a board, either depending who would actually be running the housing study, whether it's the EDA or the city council, then they would open up the bids and make a selection on which team, and then we would provide all of our current documentation to them. So we'd give them a copy of our comp plan, the community engagement report. So we'd give them everything that we could that would be able to pertain to.
So you asked for a study, I guess, at the one meeting that I was at, or that when they want to develop the property in the fourplex and everything else, the outroar, the thing that come from that project that kind of turned it away and doing things. That was to me kind of a study.
Yeah.
That was, I mean, I just, in the property that they wanted to do where they wanted to do it, you can, to me, to spend the money on that, the people all turned it down and didn't want any of that type of thing there. I'm not saying that it would never come, but as far as the study goes for some of the property that's out here right now,
We just learned something, is what you're saying?
Okay.
yeah, it was shut down and turned away.
In that case, though, they were, if I remember correctly, they were trying to change the zoning for that land, and the people around it were in lesser concentrated, they're going higher concentrated, and so they were trying to change the zoning. So it's pretty significant, right? Whereas if I found a place that the zoning allowed for a eightplex, hopefully the neighbors around there aren't as highly concentrated. We may not run into as many.
Okay, well, I was just curious because when the gal was here for the, talked about, when, Badger, and she talked about the property and developing that, there was concern, well, we're gonna put these smaller buildings behind this house and do this. I'm just saying is, before I jump into a study, you better, to spend that kind of money, there's certain places where they know that it's not gonna happen, and so, unless a new tract of land would come up somewhere that you zone it, you do it that way, and then.
The housing study won't tell you where to put them.
You get some study or some direction from our engagement planning too, of what type of housing we want to see as far as what we.
Well, right, we do have the results from the housing from that.
Starting point.
But a housing study, it might address the types of housing that we're looking to put into the community, but it won't be telling you where to put them, because they'll be taking their cue straight from our zoning maps and our future use map, because that'll come from our comp plan versus the housing plan. So they definitely won't be saying, you know, over here is where you need to be putting these. They may find areas where they have, you know, some recommendation, but for the most part, it'll just be the types of housing, and the types of, residents that we're gonna be seeing a higher influx of, you know, where our age is and what's gonna be coming in the future years, what type of expansion we can expect.
Do we have, and I don't want to get too far sidetracked again, but do we have much for rental housing? I know there's a couple triplexes and fourplexes on the west side of
Some
52.
threeplexes, there's a, if you look at
But
that map right behind you, Jeff. There's an R2, there's a couple of those orange, those are R2 or,
Over here?
yeah.
Yeah, but for the most part, there's not.
the west side
Yeah.
of the highway.
Yeah, I'm familiar with a couple of the fourplex and triplex, but I'm just asking because I'm curious.
No, that's,
Well, you got the one
We-
down,
we
you got
very
the one
little-
down
we
here.
have very
beside
little
that hall.
Dedicated rental. There's an apartment over here?
if you look at the
You got
zoning map.
You got
here,
the three-story house down here this side, across from the.
You look at the zoning map, there's 1, 2, 3 locations right now down West Center Street on the left-hand side, and then what's scheduled R2 in, down by the Gas and Go. So we have now.
Well, you have the one just across, you know, just south of the Dollar General there on top of the hill, the little three-story, that's a rental.
That's just
Okay,
maybe.
well, continue on.
Okay,
I
so,
will say, Rebecca, when it comes to rentals in town, there's a very few rentals, and then of that, they're very they're not available very often, if at all. They're
Right.
pretty soon to be long-term lease rentals, so it's pretty much like there's no rentals in this town, for the most part.
okay, thank you. So for housing, what we have right now then is to develop vacant residential properties, rental property assistance programs. I'm putting in there to have a housing study then to be looked at. And then the other item that we had on here was to, recruitment of senior facilities. That was something that in our report, there was a lot of direction aimed towards like of the comments that were aimed towards senior facilities. So we'd be able to start looking at potential of the feasibility, I guess, of where one could go, if it's feasible for us to be able to keep one in business. If so, how many beds, what types? And so starting to look into something like that, determining, you know, is it just in an assisted living center? Is it memory care that's really needed in the area? So looking into those particular specifics, I think it'd be something good to look at. When it does come to housing, outside of those 4 topics, is there anything in those 4 that you guys think we could pass on, or you think we should focus more on, or anything you'd like to add in to the regarding housing?
One comment I would have, because the way it's worded, it sounds like we're working with area developers with these items that you just mentioned, so. And I don't know if you have worked with a advisory board in other cities made up of a couple contractors, a couple developers, on some type of advisory board, to kind of complement the housing study, I guess. If the EDA would feel like that's worthy of something setting up, but it could give us some insights that we're not aware of because we're not the experts. And they should either give us some ideas what we should be thinking about, along with what the residents would like to.
Right.
Something.
Yep.
Throw that out there for.
Seems like the things here that you've suggested work really well together. So understanding what's available, what's open, and if there's any future planning going on, so we can get a really good sense of that. If our community is open to a housing study, I think that'll help us for long-term planning and understanding potential growth and impact on the gaps. It seems like those 2 things to me rise to the top, and then these other pieces start to fit into those,
Right.
both the rental property. Because I think in the housing study, it should help us understand the gaps in our current rental property planning for our community and the opportunities, which then I think would open us to better understand what tools are available and locations. Because a lot of times those work better closer to transit and other public amenities, so understanding those pieces.
Yep.
And then the senior facilities, I just wrote in my notes that, you know, timing and location will be important for this because of the need of access to certain things
Absolutely.
and our limited ones. So I found that coming in, not solo, but just waiting to help get some of those other things done first. So that's kind of what I was thinking.
Yeah.
Others have thought.
Anybody else have any housing input? Alrighty. So the next section that we've got is our economic development section. In that one, first item on here we've got is to develop a commercial property list. I've actually already started on this. So I've started going through the process of building a list that has all of the businesses that we have in town, their addresses, acreage, all the details on each of those properties, what they're paying in taxes each year, all of those things, so that we have a full picture of those properties, and what's being done there. And then with that, we'll be able to make a list of developable properties. So properties that are maybe owned but not being utilized currently. And then we can look at better ways to be able to reutilize or redevelop those locations. You know, we could look at establishing a fix-up fund, which can sometimes help with, you offer to local businesses the ability to get a match, you know, if it's a $2,500 maximum, maybe, that they can get just to put up new signage or to, you know, repaint the front facade of their building, but something just to help spruce it up, just to help with that curb appeal. So those types of programs are something that we can look at, but obviously finding out what the wants, the needs, and the building needs are of our local businesses would come from building that commercial property list, because we'll go through and have individual one-on-ones with each of the business owners here in town, so we can find out what each is, you know, what their goals are moving forward, what their expansion potential plans are. You know, if there's anything that we'd be able to help assist with moving forward. So that'll all be kind of part of the same project. And then that connects with the next one listed, which is small business outreach. So that will include those business visits and that business database, but it will help us to find those trends. And then we're able to potentially offer, you know, online marketing course, so that anybody who's interested would be able to sign in one day and watch an online marketing course that we'd be able to have provided specifically for businesses in Orinoco. Or if they're looking at financing help, things like that. So we would be able to look at utilizing, you know, U of M or Winona University to help perform some of those courses. And then next we've got, small business survey. That's just kind of what we typically will use to go business to business and have those one-on-one discussions. That way we make sure that we get all of the information about each business. And then the nice thing about these inventories is they can be kept. We'll have it put into the online database that we have that is shared with the city. That way, even if you guys end up not being with CETA one day, you still have that information in that database, and it'll have the history of each of those properties. So anytime something comes up, you've got all of that information that'll be stuck there together for future use. And then it will also assist us with developing small business programs based on what we find out the needs are of our local businesses, because that way we are able to direct those programs specifically at what our needs are versus potential needs. Business subsidy programming, obviously we'll be determining that based on input from our local businesses. But the first thing that I'll be looking at is the Minnesota Investment Fund, because they do offer a program for 0 to no interest loans, and that would go out to a business. I have spoken with Two Sisters about it once. I'm going to be approaching them again now that they're open. They wanted to wait till their business was open first, but they're looking at doing that strip mall, and they were looking at potentially partnering with us on this so that we would go in together to make the application. They would be taking out the loan, but we would be administering it. And then 50% of that loan, after it's been paid back by them, we get to keep. And that money would be used only for a revolving loan fund. So we couldn't spend it on anything else. It would only be able to be used in a revolving loan fund. But then we'd be able to loan that money out to local businesses. And then as they pay it back and pay interest, that just keeps replenishing our account, our revolving loan fund account. And they have this one-time exemption for you to be able to use this program, and you can, it's a large program. If they took out a $600,000 loan and paid it back, then we get $300,000 that we could use to put into our local businesses over and over and over. So it's,
What's the benefit to the business?
to the business is that they get a 0% interest loan instead of going through a bank and financing with an interest-based loan.
Got it.
So it'd still be a lower interest loan than what they did, what they would get through a bank. Even if it is 1 or 2%, it'll still be substantially lower than what prime is. Next one on here, business recruitment. Again, once we know more about what we need, we'll be able to select those market studies that we'd like to have done, determine marketing, packaging, and childcare needs, those kinds of things. So I think that will come a little bit more as we're digging into our business needs. But I think that that'll be something that is pretty high on the needs. And as far as marketing, putting together a community marketing package that lets, potential businesses know, hey, this is why you want to come to Orinoco and do business. We can put in there what, the properties that are around, putting in our zoning information, different amenities that are available to people, because obviously we want to let them know about the school district, all of those kind of things. So putting together a marketing package is another thing that's very helpful in working to help recruit new businesses.
Stewartville's done something like that, and maybe other cities too, so.
Yep. And a lot of times you can utilize very similar packages for new residents as well. So a lot of that stuff kind of duplicates itself. So you've got those too.
I have a question. The developer that come here last meeting, talking about developing all this property.
Mhm.
It sounds to me that they pretty much got in their mind, or already done a lot of the work to say who they plan to have spots picked out already. Supposedly, that's as they talked to us, that are already picked out, and they said that they're gonna be very cautious on who they let in there and how they build and what they do, and they're going to finish each slot as they go so that the development all comes together and there's not a lot of empty space. So my question is so Ms. Badger said, well, it was King or Badger? King, okay. I just don't, anyway. Glenda King, when they did that, she asked us, so for my information, she asked, is there anything out there? So as you're going down through all this, if she's developing the property, does that, for her to put the sewer and the water and everything else, does that count as an entrepreneur doing the development, that she takes this low interest loan out? And then as the people want to come and build a building on that property, they would come back to us and say, we're entrepreneurs, we're putting up the gas station, or we're putting up the grocery store, whatever we're doing. They would also dip into this and say, is there a low interest fund that EDA is going to help them with? Because if that's the case, and you said half the money coming in back, you're talking millions of dollars.
I don't know that we'd be able to use that program for their project though, because it's a private development project. This would be more for the strip mall that Two Sisters is looking at putting up.
But that's private. That's a private development, same as what she's doing. So I'm just, in my head, I'm just looking to
There's
see.
multiple buildings that they're looking at. The other is just one building.
One big building with multiple businesses in a building.
Yes, but it doesn't include roads, parking lots,
Okay.
all of those extra pieces. We wouldn't be able to use the MIF loan for that
Okay.
big development.
Okay, so the development, to put the roads, to put the sewer, that's on them, but the point is that these people come in and want to build the roads are in, the property's for sale. And what you were just saying to me, they take, in today's age, $1 million is nothing. To put a building up, $1 million is kind of your starting fee. And so they take a loan out on that building. I'm just in my head with what you just said to me, is that the property develops, everyone jumps into that. You're talking millions of dollars. They take the low interest loan out. You say you get to keep half. You could end up with a lot of money, keeping a lot of money out of all these projects as they build, because if they go to this program. That's all I'm seeing millions of dollars.
Right, but we can only have one open at a time. We can't have multiple loans with this program, so.
Okay, well, then
Yeah.
you answered my question.
Yeah.
I was just saying, if you're doing that,
You're saying scale it up big and the city can benefit a lot.
Yeah, the bigger the loan, the bigger that we can, the more that we can get, for sure, absolutely.
okay, well,
But-
my only question was, it seems to me like the pyramid there is like, it's huge. I mean, if
Yep.
you open up, you got the gas station, your grocery store, you got the chiropractor over across the street. They're all putting all these buildings in, and they're all $1 million buildings, and we get half, that's $500,000.
Let's be honest, who says she has to finance it? That's only if it's financed.
Okay, well, I just said,
Well, that's where it's at.
Investors, yeah.
That's if it's financed.
Right, so
They
it'd
don't have
be,
money, don't require the funding for the finance.
In some ways, to answer your question, we don't know what we don't know.
well, I just.
Sometimes we'll have that
right,
discussion.
but there can only be one application that would come
Then
from.
you answer that question,
Yep.
because I thought that pyramid could go like,
Yep,
Maybe the larger question might be when with the underneath the business subsidy programming, is I wonder if there's a way, like you have the Minnesota Investment Fund, but should we be identifying other funds or resources that our team could be capitalizing on, and should that be part of our planning? Like,
yes and no.
there's other grants, but in here, there's other grants and resources that are available across the state and across the
Yep,
country.
there are
and
thousands.
Thousands. So where does that fit into our work plan? I'm assuming, some of it is just by nature of what you do.
Right,
But how are we aware of them? So, we're constantly making sure that we have the most up-to-date tools, financial tools and others available to help businesses be successful. Does that show up in here somewhere?
no,
Okay.
and we could certainly look at trying to come up with something along those lines, but grants are changing so much that we can't make like a full-on, this is what's available. And they come around at different parts of the year. We do have a big master CETA list that we try to keep updated amongst all of us so that we could keep an idea on it, keep an eye on it and know about everything that's coming up. But for a lot of them, we try not to just list out like commercial programs or residential programs, because then people look at them and they think they just qualify. And sometimes, I mean, first of all, you have to have the program or whatever you're looking at doing, whatever project it is, it needs to be shovel ready before we apply. And we also have to know what's going in there. If it's residential, we have to know what's it bringing in for taxes? How many bedrooms? How many, how big is it? What's the square footage? If they don't have all that information yet, we don't even know if they qualify. And for businesses, depending on what type of business, depends on what type of equipment they're looking at doing or what they're looking at doing. That's a whole other pool of potential programs that all are based on those technicalities. So it's hard to just list out a whole bunch without knowing specifically kind of what we're looking at, if that makes sense.
Seems like we have so many variables that
Exactly.
it makes it difficult to understand what kind of strings are gonna become attached to the
So
money.
subdivision
Money
3,
usually comes with strings attached one way or another.
Oh, there always is gonna be some strength, yeah, for sure.
Exactly.
so subdivision 3, under that goal number 3, says EDA should provide needed educational resources and training. So we should rely on you to bring that to the EDA or whether it's the financial that Jamie was talking about or whatever those
Sorry, where are we at?
identified goal number 3 on page,
Oh, we're on the recommendations.
provide small business development services. Number 3I, the triple I, under that goal number 3.
Yep.
You're talking about.
So CETA will bring
senior
those
facilities.
to the EDA as it arises.
Basically, like, yeah, if we know that there's a project someone's looking at, then we immediately start looking into anything that can relate to that potential project. And then we start exploring what we qualify for.
Not so much.
Right, well, and like I said, we can make one. The only problem is that a lot of times then that turns into a lot of, Becky, I need you to look at this, look at this, look at this, look at this. And then I've spent half of our time looking at things that I already knew we couldn't qualify for.
Right.
If I had brought up a project, I'm just saying, like, if I bring up a list, then that's typically what ends up happening.
I think at a minimum though, I think it'd be helpful if we knew of the significant ones, right? There's thousands of grants, but like the Minnesota Investment Fund, if we know of it's not uncommon commercial development for the developer to look at the project and say, okay, land cost is this, but there's this kind of fund, there's some TIF funds, and there's this program available. And it's knowing that that program is available and piecing those things together that tees it up for the developer to make it all work.
Yep,
Right?
absolutely.
So having a working knowledge of the significant ones, I think would sure be helpful if we can.
Yeah, and I can try and get as much info
Quarterly
as I
update or
can
whatever.
as those projects start popping up, because I guess I struggle with knowing exactly which programs to write down versus which ones not to, just because it's all based on
What do we need?
what we're working on. So I mean, there's a big BDPI grant for infrastructure, but unfortunately it won't work for commercial developments. That has to be for housing developments. So we had actually started looking at that for the King project, because I've been looking for potential programming for them. And that was the one I was kind of hoping for, but it looks like that isn't going to work out for that particular one, but we're still digging in. So as soon as programs come up that we're looking into, I'll make sure I bring them to you guys right away and we at least review them at the next meeting.
And your one-on-one with the local business is gonna help identify.
Yep, and that's where like my knowledge of ones that we do have will come into play, as well as then being able to reach out to my colleagues and finding anything different if I'm unaware. So it's part of that team structure that kind of helps us out into that. Does that make sense at all?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. Okey doke. And the last one we have on here is historic downtown. And for this one, I think it's gonna be more of a conversation. It could be a very, very long project, or it could be something we just decide not to do, but a lot of people wanted to see historic downtown revitalized or re-engaged. So I think being able to work with planning and zoning to determine if there's a new commercial district that they'd like to start working on, or if we want to look at revitalizing our own downtown, or if you want to try and do both. But basically looking at if that revitalization is something that we as a board would like to move forward with or looking into. I do have it down as a low priority because of the fact that there's so many potential projects that could be happening, but it's certainly something that we could keep our eyes open for. So I'd be redeveloping some of the buildings that are downtown, and if they want to be used for a new business that maybe could open up in it, and maybe turning it into apartments above, or any of those potential opportunities, so. When it comes to economic development specifically and those recommendations, do you guys have any other items you think that we want to make sure we put into our work plan for next year? And if obviously we can add to it, but.
Timeframe for your one-on-one with the local businesses?
I'm basically just gonna get started with it and try and get everybody as quickly as possible. It's just a matter of scheduling them and getting everyone to, because I'll stop in at their individual businesses during my days in town. So I would say I'd probably try and do at least 1 or 2 a week, and then just keep working my way through it.
Somewhere between 19 and 20 businesses at one time, so.
Yep, and I've got, like I said, I've got the list started, so I can send that out too, just to make sure that you guys all have a chance to point me in the right direction as to if I'm missing any.
If I have a recommendation, I would say reach out to book a meeting, because then you'll be way more successful, and then tell them what you want to talk about.
Right.
Just speaking as a business owner in town. A lot of times when people stop by, I don't have time, and
Oh yeah, I'll make sure I call beforehand for sure.
but also tee up, this is what I would like to discuss, so then at least they're thinking, about it.
Yep.
They may not have answers if it's just a cold call.
Oh, yeah, because the call will be to set up a time to chat about some things, and then I typically will also send an email to follow up, just to say, this is when we're meeting, here's the stuff that we're gonna kind of be chatting about, so that they have access to all that ahead of time. And obviously, if any business has any other requests, we can deal with those too.
I appreciate the work of trying to get some baseline and understanding, and again, similar to housing, of what the opportunities are, where people are at, and the importance of building relationships, I think is incredibly important, and trust as we think about the other work that we need to do. But under D, let's see, 5, Roman numerals, 5, right?
Yep.
D. The small business programming, in this area, I don't see it called out, but I'm assuming that we would also look at resources that other area organizations offer already, along with what maybe CEDA offers. So I'm assuming like the small business office, I forget.
Oh, Small Business Development Center, yeah.
Yeah, center, and then Ready and others, like we wouldn't our recommendation is that we're building our own, but
Right.
trying to help to be there.
Yeah, we basically just work to make those connections.
Sure, that sounds great. I think something to consider under C after we do and we get feedback, which I'll be interested to see is, other communities that I've lived in, we've learned that a regular touch point is helpful, in sharing of resources on a regular basis and trying to figure out how to stay, connected is helpful. So in that, survey, I'm assuming you must use like a format from what CETA has.
Yeah, we kind of have one that has the basics and then we tailor and add on specific
Okay.
questions.
Okay, I would be really interested to see what their thoughts are on how to stay connected and what that looks like, and if there's things that we can do to be more helpful so that they're aware of these resources or opportunities, as they're thinking about their growth in our community.
I think another thing to consider, and I'm not exactly sure where this would lie. But if you go back to when we were talking with the group from the King Development, we were asking them the types of businesses that they were going to bring in. Are they large commercial chains? Are they small business? Things like that. No matter what, more than likely a small business owner is not going to build a building and then have their business in it, right? That's just a $1 million building plus, they can't necessarily do that. So that from a small business owner perspective, you'd be looking at leasing something, and we don't have that at all, right? We don't have a lot of commercial buildings that are segmented into.
We have one right now.
Right.
That's where Cystic Boutique was at.
Right, so then it becomes, the how, or are we in the beginning, if it's a low priority to develop the downtown, which potentially would have things like that. Are we basically excluding the small businesses that don't have any places to lease or rent? So then we're just saying anyone that can build a building, which is more than likely a chain or somebody that can pay that high dollar rent. So then we're only attracting that to our community. And then, I hate to say it, but then we're a bedroom community. There's no community. There's no place for people to gather, walk around, hang out in a park, have a concert, come out. I don't know. There's something to be said there about maybe a priority might not necessarily be the downtown, but maybe it is multi-tenant spaces for a small salon to open up, or, something along those lines where you get multiple businesses out of one building. So.
Yeah, I agree, because the downtown, as I look at it, there's the gal with the old schoolhouse, she has the problem with parking, to be able, because they don't sell that, so you try to revise that. The old Berg building, that's a 0 lot line, you take the building down, it's a cliff. And there's no park, what I'm saying is there's nothing to go there, so.
Well.
Anyway, I was just saying, as I look at some of the area to do that, and so I totally agree with that. You would have someone, investor, come in and be able to put up a strip mall that people can lease. Maybe that's where we start, that you put up something like that, smaller areas for the people to lease, and then if business grows and their business grows, they can expand into a bigger business, and then a smaller entrepreneur comes back into that business because it's a smaller area. To me, I don't know if a person put up a strip mall building like that, if it's feasible to put an apartment complex above the commercial side of it, or in other words, the owner lives with the bill. I just think of some different things that you do, but I totally agree with you that there is nothing here for the smaller space, and we would have to find a developer to come in, or I wouldn't say much of a developer, but someone that wants to invest. Investors come and say, I'm gonna put this strip mall in, I'm gonna make 10 shops out of that at a certain size, and they would know, I guess if you did a report, what size shop per square foot it costs to run it. It's gotta be cheaper than Rochester. I mean, when you go out to, Fleet Farm and Hexanoi's got all those buildings out there open for lease and it's so much a square foot. Build something that the price of the square foot, if we could help them bring it down so the entrepreneur, younger businesses could move to Orinoco and start in a small business, then move into a bigger one. To me, that's where I see out in the King property or on the Two Sisters property out there is where you start that. Because that becomes visible to the public driving by and seeing it, and they stopping in versus if it's way down here, word of mouth kind of gets there.
Well, not only in add what Jan's saying, there was a 2002 land use plan. It was discussed that eventually the south interchange coming into town was gonna end up kind of more of a city center. And, you know, not necessarily for city offices, but kind of like a new downtown type area where it's kind of falling together. You got Casey's there, you got People's, you got other places that can, like, that other lots are right over by Casey. You have the King development coming on this, it's kind of falling together as that way. And maybe that's something that really needs to be leaned on for direction for a downtown space that
I would guess that
more,
with this,
more feasible for parking.
with the strip mall that the Two Sisters are talking about their father, Tom Gathie. I'm sure from an investor standpoint, they're gonna try and have occupants before they start building. So there's, otherwise I don't think they would start it until they have somebody that's seriously interested in coming into those buildings, so.
A lot of times when they
It
put
would
up,
make sense.
a lot of times they put something up like that, they already have one like an anchor business on one end and.
And then sometimes they'll even build to suit for the remaining spaces just to see who wants to come in.
Is there anything out there that allows us to better understand what the right mix of commercial space is for, like, much like the housing study that helps us understand future growth? Like, are there studies out there like that for commercial growth?
For like what types of businesses or?
Well, I think about the work that I do in my day job and we forecast out, you know, what we're looking to prioritize and grow. And there's typically for us in downtown Rochester, we're thinking about innovation space or housing or education and like big chunks. And then of course there's subdivision. And I know we're in a much different area and a different space, but I would imagine that with this early on inventory that you're suggesting, the same thing like the housing, it gives us an understanding of what's here, but then probably looking at what future growth opportunities are, you know, how are we either attracting someone that could build a little bit bigger building and have people lease or sublease or like what's needed. But I'm just not as familiar with that side of things. Like, is that like a AECom type of thing or something that can help us better understand commercial space needs?
I guess I'm not exactly sure. I don't think that there's any necessarily like a study. But once we had a developer who'd be willing to talk to and find out what types of businesses they'd be looking at, then we'd be able to address by industry, I guess, what those needs would be.
Well, out of curiosity, what is the occupancy rate of businesses in Rochester versus the other outlying cities? You know,
I have absolutely no idea, but I can
That'd be
certainly look
something-
into it.
that would be something that would be a
Yes.
number to know.
As you drive around Rochester, downtown Rochester, there'd be quite a few empty
Well,
businesses.
I don't know if this conversation is about downtown Rochester, but
It's
I
not
don't know.
about-
I'm not sure if that's what you guys want to spending my time on,
What are
but.
the tools that we need in order to better
That's
plan
not what
for
I was,
future?
that's not what I'm saying. What I'm
future
saying
growth.
is that the businesses in downtown Rochester, there's a lot of empty spaces because when they go to rent, the square footage price puts them out of business. Okay, in Orinoco, I know they could put up buildings tax wise and everything else, the square footage price would be down. You're 5 minutes, 8 minutes from north side of Rochester to any business to come out here to do that, and I think that it wouldn't take long to fill up. If somebody, it was surprising to me that when King sat there, she said, well, I got a grocery store, I got a gas station, I got this stuff, and I got people. For her to put out the millions of dollars to put the sewer and put that in that land, she's just not doing that, I'm gonna build and they will come. Someone has told her, you build it, we're gonna be there, and you got to guarantee that. That's the impression of her doing business and over the years doing that she's already got the clients to do that multi-million-dollar development. And I don't think I have to waste a lot of money on on other business, once that starts to come, the square footage price. I mean, for us to spend the city's money and say, we need this study, sometimes we do way too many studies and waste some money. To me is, if the people see the land start to turn and develop and they say, well, what are you putting that building up for? And what's your rental per square foot? That's the only thing people ask for is square foot rental.
Yeah, development brings development.
And that's what I see. So I don't see always counting on these studies. I believe that,
No, I guess I'm not really calling for a study on occupancy, but sometimes it's not a out of reach number, just call somebody and understand it.
so I would like to see us, I guess, if we develop, working with the King or doing whatever, and the two sisters, whichever one first wants to start these little malls, to answer all those questions in that thing, what the people want to see here. It's gonna be very interesting for us all to see the Dollar General when it opens up, just how busy the Dollar General stays busy.
Yep.
And does things and says, someone says, wow, that's good. Two sisters are doing well in the restaurant. The people are gonna drive, it's gonna become a destination to leave Rochester and drive out here and eat out here versus doing that.
Right.
And I see that, I see this as such a diamond, but,
Yeah.
I would like to see us go more to the housing. I would like to see our group work on the commercial side of this and start to bring the commercial in here to see just how much the people in Orinoco say they want it, but just how much the people in Orinoco will support it, and the people from Rochester will come if it's cheaper here to do it. That's just my opinion.
Yep, absolutely.
I think Linda and Joe have a pretty good idea of the clientele that they're looking at. Otherwise, they wouldn't be spending this much money up front with empty stores, so.
I think they're blindly looking at it.
But they got an idea, but they just.
They don't.
Joe
Not ready to share. I
often
don't-
said Hy-Vee and Quick Trip during the discussion.
You don't know.
You know,
Okay, let's keep moving here, so.
All right. So our next item then is gonna be transportation. For that, I don't believe we have, okay, yeah, I don't believe we have anything that's high priority on our list for that. What I have on here is Safe Routes to School Planning Assistance Grant. That is a program that happens every year, and they're able to take a look at where you're able to help with students being able to safely move about their neighborhoods. And being able to provide us with information as to where the best places to address things are. It's not really a grant where they give you money. Instead, it's a grant where they come and they just do all the work. So we'd apply for it and they would come in and they would host a community engagement item to try and invite in as many parents and students and people as possible to discuss what's a good way for students to be able to move about town. Obviously here, it's a very different scenario than in other communities because we're going towards where kids get picked up by a bus versus actually making it to the school. But it does give us some opportunities for looking at the addition of sidewalks in certain areas or adding trail spaces to be able to address some of the movement throughout the community. And that would include just an exploration, so to speak, of crossing over Highway 52. There are a number of different ways that you're able to add a pedestrian crossing to an existing overpass. And so those are kind of the types of things that I think we could look into. That way we'd be able to look at, for example, there was a lot of people saying how much they'd like us to be able to connect to the state trail. Well, if we're gonna do that, we have to connect both sides to it. So it's looking at how we can take all those things, put it into one project that then might be able to receive enough funding to make them feasible for us. But going through these Safe Routes to School programs, they're really just available to give us information. They have a planning assistance grant to basically design what you're looking for and to identify your needs. And then they have a design assistance grant where they come in and they will do all of the engineering for you. So that saves the city, you know, tens of thousands of dollars paying for engineering fees because they just send MnDOT in to do it. And because MnDOT is the ones doing it, you don't have to argue with them about anything because they've already done it all for you. So when it comes to having to talk to the state for permissions for things, they've already taken care of all of that through their process. And then there's also the big infrastructure grant that then that one can help pay for half of your trail. half to 3/4, depending on the projects, but I don't, again, have any of this as a large high priority item, but just as things that can be kind of kept in the background for planning purposes. Is there anything else transportation related outside of trails that you think the EDA may want to focus on?
Could that include, I know that Minnesota Avenue is very busy with commuter traffic, which can be a good thing, I guess, if there are a lot of businesses downtown. But there's also another route on a frontage road that you can get to the highway pretty much the exact same time, and you can go faster. Is there a study that can be done there relevant to, you know, amount of traffic and speeds and, you know, if you make it almost impossible for them to drive 30 miles an hour all the way out, which it has been done, helps. But there's so much traffic on Minnesota and barely anyone taking the back way around to get, and you know, they're going to the highway just to come through from commuting, so. I don't know.
And they come up and get off the highway because it's short.
Same
They go
thing.
the other exit, you know.
Well,
Exactly.
in theory, yeah.
There is a piece of land, by the, Two Sisters. It's the, if you look at the map,
To the east of Two Sisters?
where the R2 is down there at the bottom around Gas and Go, where the orange line stops, there's 2.6 acres, which is where the mound system,
Down here.
the other end. Oh, you're. So there's this 2.6 acres right here.
Okay.
That's where the mound system was, with sewer system was planned for that whole area.
Okay.
It's outside the R2, but that's possibility for like a park and ride possibly, to coordinate with.
Is that city space now, or is that, whose is that?
Pardon?
Whose space is that now after the?
It's still Tom Gathier's property, yeah. But it's for sale. That's something that we, if there's, it all kind of depends what comes into R2. If that's an area that transportation is needed, that might be a good place for a park and ride. Or as the Hamilton development is developed too. That might be another
Park
reason.
and rides don't pay very good property taxes, do they? They're kind of free parking and.
I don't know if the city buys it, then that probably wouldn't be the case, but that's just I thought there may be a different location. I know when they did the planned future land use map, they went back and forth with the park and ride on the west side, or if it's on the east side of the Highway 52 interchange too. So it has been talked about. It's just a matter of, do we really need it? And if we need it, where do we, it's the best place.
You got one 3 miles up the highway, so it's kind of hard to, one that isn't half full.
75th Street has it, and they
It's about,
just,
not even half full, is it?
well, what they did was,
Changed.
nobody was using it, so they closed the IBM lot off.
Mm-hmm.
So they force you to, which is odd, they force the people out farther to park, to send the electric bus out to pick them up.
There's something to think about.
Yeah.
Make you aware of it.
Yep,
Okay.
I've put that down on here. Community facilities and amenities, recreational trail planning and expansion. We've already kind of covered that. This particular section just specifically mentions the potential connection to the Douglas Trail. A connection for river amenities and, exploring some more recreational planning.
You know, when you talk about connecting to the Douglas Trail, you know, it's 3 miles out of town. Are we paying for trails to get out there to connect to it, or are they is Douglas Trail gonna come and connect here?
That would all be a part of the project, is exploring those opportunities and finding out what would be the partnership that could be developed there, but it would provide that recreational accessibility to everyone in the town by adding that in. And it would also then provide an ability for students to bike to school because they'd be able to get to Pine Island utilizing the Douglas Trail. So they would have that opportunity provided as well, as obviously the whole community would have have the exercise opportunities added in
Would
and
you
some
have to do
walking.
eminent domain and take and buy the people's property to get to that point?
Not necessarily, no.
So
I
Olmsted
think
County,
eminent domain is like a last resort
Well,
for
we're just curious
anything,
because
yeah.
you don't own the land for the trail to go on to get to somewhere.
A lot of times you can just chat with the property owners and get easements for it.
Okay.
Yep.
You like Rochester, just paint blue stripes on the road.
Cool.
Well, I think more of an individual
Ten-
conversation
10
with
person
anyone who would be in
figure
there, but there'd be a lot of planning that would go into even the discussion of what areas it could go through. And so I think all of those property owners would be engaged through that process to see what would be allowable, what would be encourageable, what people would be supportive of.
Rebecca, remind me when we're looking at the colors of these and how you've coded them.
Yep.
So it's a medium. So first of all, context, this all came again from our community engagement response. And
Yep.
then based upon that, you ranked them and with your knowledge. So you're bringing these forward to us in a medium, saying these would not be high priority, but things we want to consider in a planning effort. So it's not something that we would go after today.
Correct, yeah,
But if an opportunity were to arise or you were made aware of a resource.
yeah,
Or something shifts, we may want to look at this. So we're not saying that we're gonna do it right away. We're just saying
exactly.
if an opportunity arises, the community has shared that they're interested in this. And it could potentially fit into our long-term.
Yep.
plan.
So, but the last meeting we were at, I thought we talked about grant money when we talked about park and recreation. There was grant money out there for a park or doing something. We talked about if you would write the grant to get the monies to put the cement sidewalk. It was to upgrade a shelter or whatever, you had to do that. So I mean, even though this is a medium, at the same time, if there's something out there,
That's
the
what I
grants
just
that
said.
come along.
Yep.
It only is a medium, but you can do that about putting the sidewalk in from the shelter, where from the parking lot where down to the benches, because people can't get there now because of the grass. So sometimes a medium, if there's a
Yep.
grant,
I agree.
you jump right in and say, oh, well, if I can maybe get that and improve that park.
Yep.
Just because it's medium, you don't put it on the back burner, you say, well, it's there, let's
Right,
improve that, is what we
I
talked
said the
about.
same thing. that
Yep.
you just said.
so the Douglas Trail is on the Olmsted County's project list. It was a couple of years ago at least, and the trail is to follow 100th Street all the way down to the Douglas Trail. So there has been identified as a bike trail on the Olmsted County's planning department. Highways and roads, so it's just a matter of drawing attention to it and getting it elevated up to that.
Has the county drawn up an easement to go along there so they can put a trail on it? I guess.
Study the details, I
I see
think
they've
maybe
done
just
it
pushing
on
dirt
other
up and putting a shoulder on it, on the road and paving it, so.
Is
But it
there,
is out there on the Olmsted County planning, so you may just wanna include the state of Minnesota and Olmsted County. For the river amenities, I'm working on a project, it's the Zumbo River Regional Water Trail. And, we got $170,000 from the LCCMR to put together a plan for a master plan of how we're going to develop the regional water trail, which follows all the Zumbo River branches, all the way from Dodge Center and Vanderbilt, Pine Island, Dubuque, through Rochester, through Lake Zumbo, all the way down to Kellogg. So we've got the funding. It was awarded to us in July. We're waiting for SEH Engineering, which is the engineering firm that's going to do all the work. So we haven't initiated that work yet, but that's going to be part of developing the master plan of this regional water trail and hopefully get approved by the Greater Parks and Trails Commission so we can continue to get funding to identify 4, 5, 6 strategic locations on that river that would have the amenities for restrooms, parking, signage from the highways telling you where you can access these different points. So that'll be coming. We'll start working on that. And I think we have to use the funding by September of next year. So we're working with the 4 counties that will help identify, putting together a governing board. So there's some potential there for us. Of course, hoping that Orinoco is one of those strategic points. I think we have a lot to offer with the river and the rapids and canoeing to Lake Zumbo, so, or kayaking.
Do we know kind of when they're planning on like launching their research for that or identifying those points, like how we might be able to work with them?
As far as the river trail,
Mhm.
well, we have representatives from Rochester and also from the county. It's on our stakeholders committee, I guess you'd say. We just have to have a plan, a master plan and use of the 170 towards this planning of design of how these amenities are gonna look like, as well as coming up with a, agreement, if you will, amongst the counties and how we're gonna do it right now, so.
What's the name of the group, Ryland? What's the name of the group?
Zumbro River Regional Water Trail.
Okay.
There's a website, out on the internet right now. And there's a survey there. I don't know if it's still active, but, Zumbro River Watertrail.org, I think, or something like that, so.
Is there a limit to the amount of grants that a city can do at one time? I feel like every single bullet point we've talked about a grant.
Oh, yeah. I try to find funding for everything. Sometimes you can get 2 or 3 grants for one project. And yeah, so I mean, you can probably only have one of each type of grant ever open at a time. Most places won't give you the same thing right away. But yeah, you can use multiple grants for one project. And the nice thing is when you're able to find multiple grants that can then act as matching dollars for the other grants, because then that's less than the city ultimately will ever have to put into the project too. Some of those matching funds. And that's not to say that every project is gonna be eligible for a grant or approved, because I mean, a lot of these grants are just incredibly competitive. So we're fighting the state, everybody else in the state for them, but. So is there a way for us to be able to put our input into it? Like, because I know they're gonna have counties who are gonna be kind of overseeing it, but just to get like, you know, to try and push Orinoco a little further out there.
Well, I'm on the board.
Oh, well,
Not on the board,
fabulous.
but I'm one of the leader, I guess. You could
Okay.
Put a name to it, but I'm the one that arranges all the meetings and work with SEH. We have a guiding committee, which is made up of myself and a person from there's 3 people from the SEH Engineering, myself, and another one who was he was a citizens representative on the Zumbro Watershed Partnership.
Okay.
And so we're kind of the guiding committee, and then we have we have county and city representatives. Katie Dudley was on it from the parks, or is on it from the Orinoco Parks, but we have city administrators, park supervisors. There's a list of about 40 people that's on that list, so. Stakeholders, I guess, from the different
Awesome.
counties, so.
Rebecca, I would assume that these types of things, like you just mentioned, Ryland, Orinoco, is it a Parks Commission? Is that what our parks is called? We have a Parks Board.
Parks and Tourism
Parks,
Committee.
yeah.
So like these types of things are being shared with their groups. I'm assuming they have priorities as well.
Yep. And then the priority list too, like how I have our Economic Development Authority recommendations. There was also a Parks and Rec list that I sent out to Parks and Rec. There was a Planning and Zoning one as well that I sent out. So all of the different boards did get theirs too. Yep. And then the last one that I have on here is electric vehicles. I know that that's not a high priority, but the state has been throwing out money to help people get charging stations in their communities. So it's just something that's out there that if we wanted to be able to offer that service to residents or to potential new residents, it's something that we can look into. You know, putting it at a park or putting it at City Hall or.
I think currently anybody that owns electric vehicles is probably gonna want it charging at home. So I have a hard time.
But if
looking
you
at it.
don't live in Orinoco and you're visiting Orinoco and you're gonna be here for an extended period of time, sometimes having that opportunity, like say you're gonna go kayaking down the river and maybe you're gonna be leaving your vehicle at Alice Park, and that's just a great place for someone to plug in while they disappear, and city gets this, I guess Peoples gets some business out of it, and we get that visitation out of it. So it's just something that offers an amenity for people who might be looking for it. But again, it's obviously not something that I have on our list as something, a major priority, but more of if the free money's out there and we don't have to pay for it, then we might as well take the
like-
amenity.
So the question there though, sometimes there was some free money there. You put it in and then the city becomes to maintain it. It's free to put in, and so you say you get your thing,
No,
the grant money then continues to take care of that forever? It's not a city problem?
no, it would become part of, people's infrastructure. So they would be the ones taking care of it. We would be the ones purchasing the equipment. They would install and maintain that equipment the same way that they would any other
But you
electric
would charge the
equipment.
people to charge, would they not?
Yeah, they swipe a
Yep.
credit card or debit card.
Okay, well, I was just saying,
Yeah.
nothing's free.
No, but that's, people's will be getting that, but it's free for us and it's free for the residents.
It's free for the equipment, but you pay the,
Just like the streetlights. The streetlights are all People's Energy Cooperative.
Mhm.
We pay the light bill.
But we won't pay that. The people who are using the,
well, we do pay it because it's on our, there again, the people, they charge you on your bill and their rates to cover their streetlights and everything else. There's nothing free.
no, but what I'm saying is city doesn't pay for the electricity being used by those. Those get paid by the person who's using the,
Correct.
yeah, so the city wouldn't pay for any of this.
Right, so I mean, because the new parking right has the same thing on 75th. They got 2 or 3 stations there.
Yeah.
You can plug into if you have an electric car.
But yeah, to the city, there wouldn't be
Okay.
any cost. So other facilities and amenities, recreational trail planning, we've already gone over that. So parks and recreation, the 3 different things that were, brought up that I thought would be good to keep an eye on would be, a dog park, trying to identify a good location. Again, this could be something to talk with planning and zoning about to find out, what are they really thinking for residential development? Because that obviously makes a big difference onto the types of parks you're gonna want to have and where. Developing a canoe and kayak launching area. I know that technically, Alice Park does have a launch steps. I don't know if any of you have been to them. I went and took pictures of them the last time I was in town. I would say we should probably be blocking that off and telling people beware and not to go anywhere near it because it is incredibly dangerous right now. Everything's pretty washed away. So I would say, developing something like that with like a concrete walk down path or loading area would be something I think that people would be able to utilize, and it would also make a new destination location.
Is the state access still there, Ryland?
I'm sorry,
Is the state access still down there by Justin's?
the DNR launch?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
It's still there.
Yeah.
That's a safe place to launch.
Yeah,
Okay, good.
Yeah.
I was gonna say they have the DNR right here.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I couldn't remember, I just said state, but DNR, yeah.
is Justin the one that runs Boulder, okay. So yeah, and I thought that is community, anybody can go there.
Right, and certain part of it,
Yep,
part of
yep,
it's his,
yep,
part of
yep.
it's private, but
That makes sense.
that road going back in there is an alley.
Okay.
It's a state access.
Perfect.
That's where you see people back in there waiting and.
And then the other item I have on here is just to identify recreation needs. So I think part of that is just partnering with Parks and Recreation and finding out what it is that they're looking for so that we can kind of help keep an eye out for programs and grants that might be able to help them out.
One thing we need to be aware of or work with is age-friendly Orinoco area. We just met on this past Thursday. So there's a group, about 7 of us that are on the committee, and it's an ARP affiliation, and we're in the process of getting a bylaws. We found an attorney in Winona that's a pro bono that did our incorporation and bylaws and everything, so that's finishing up. So I need to mention the path we supplied or that we've applied for grant for, from the parking cul-de-sac at the Orinoco Park to the shelter. That's to me, that's an age-friendly type thing that
Yep.
we're looking at that and we'll be doing more work of getting input back from the Parks and Rec of how age-friendly, because we have access to ARP grants, ARP. Age-friendly Orinoco area is supported by ARP. And so there's one in Pine Island, Olmsted County has one. We have ours now, so it's all geared around 55 years and older, how people can stay in their home, but at the same time make amenities within the city more attractive to seniors and so on.
Yep.
I keep hearing pickleball when Ryland's talking, so if there's a pickleball grant, I'd be all in on that
We
one.
got a pickleball painted On the tennis courts at
Yeah,
River
we
Park,
do.
yeah.
That is nice.
That is just exploding everywhere.
Good reason.
That would be a,
But it is pretty age friendly as far as
Oh,
rec and
absolutely.
age friendly, but it's also good, you know, kids are.
in Rochester, they're standing in line at Cook's Park,
Oh,
Literally.
big time.
literally standing in line to
Cars are
wait for
sitting in
your,
the street, aren't
for,
they?
for your game. So my question, the business up there, indoor pickleball, a 2-court pickleball thing for the winter or whatever it was.
8 or 12.
My point, I just feel like my question is, there you go, there's the business.
Yep. And we'll make sure that I've got pickleball definitely to be explored.
A couple asterisks.
Well,
I've got at least one now in a box around it, so we're gonna.
Make that indoor pickleball if you're gonna make a business out of it.
Yeah.
Well,
Just do what they did in Minneapolis and make an indoor dog park with a bar. I'd go.
Slash
it works for a
pickleball.
lot of people.
Yes, with pickleball, done.
Dog
slash
drives home.
daycare.
Awesome. All right, the final section that I have is very low priority, but again, just wanting to find out ideas and thoughts and opinions on these, but a new city hall and potentially library. Now, those could be one and the same, they could be either or, they could be neither of them. But those were things that were identified through our process that we are in need of, because what we currently have is out of compliance. With the library, I think the biggest comments that I was seeing is that when it does come, the book bus, the bookmobile, is that it's always on the same days of the week. And so people who aren't able to make it on that one day are never able to make it on that one day. So it's really just an amenity that they're not able to have access to. And so having something that might work as a small library could also be beneficial. And again, there's tons of funding out there for that kind of stuff. But that again, doesn't have to be a separate building all on its own. It could just be a section of an existing building. It could be, you know, inside one room of a building, whether it's of City Hall or something else. So those are just two different ideas that are out there for new community facilities that would be utilized by the city.
Is there anything out there, just out of curiosity, you know, the city or whatever? I would see that the fire department, the city hall, a community center, would all be in one building. You build one building and
City campus.
It houses it all. And I don't know what the fire department grant money or for, you know, to build something. But I see a lot of the small town, a lot of different things. They've all incorporated the city hall, the fire station, and everything all under one roof.
Yeah, it makes it really cost efficient.
To me, I mean, and the government's all, you know, one-stop shop. If you need something or whatever. And to me, if they did that something up there, this building here, and I don't know what shape this is in, but you talk about, senior housing or apartment complex or whatever, this school or wherever, I don't know what the shape of it is. Down here, because you had the parking out and everything else, that this would become an apartment complex for the elderly, that you could make it into something,
They've
but
done that with a lot of schools.
to me, I would say to move this up to that development, the whole works. I don't know if there's any, and I always don't say grant, but I really think the city needs to be looking, when you say low there, is that, that all those things come together, which opens up the building over here for something and doing different things to be able to do things. Just, and it's easy access to the highway to whatever, in and out or whatever you're doing. That's just,
Yep, absolutely. And I think when it comes to items like this, obviously, this is not an EDA specific thing. It's gonna be a council specific thing. But a lot of times just being able to keep an eye out on what's happening in the EDA sphere, so to speak, and knowing what programs might be coming up, it just makes it a good place for us to be able to have a discussion on whether or not we've ever gotten to a point where bringing it to council's attention to possibly make some action. It's a convenient way to be able to do that without having to burden council with it when you're beforehand, essentially.
so my question, and I'm just gonna think outside the box. Ryan, you said that there's city property around here. You sell the city property, you've got 3 lots there, you got your septic systems and everything else, you sell those to a developer and get that money back. to put your building and put yourself into the line, in other words, you sell that property and help them out. And then you take that money that the city makes and that helps pay. Because the properties only get more as the time goes on, even though your city, the property up there is gonna get more expensive as time goes on. To me, it would be some of the developers, I don't know if they could do that, I'm talking outside the box, but do some land swapping with some developers. So that you could get the money to move into a better location to do your things and do it while it's cheaper now to set the ground kind of to go that direction. It's just my thought process, because you talk about property here now and get the developer say, how about if I swap you this, this and this? And in turn, we get a piece of this. And the city, it has no, yeah, you got closing costs, I don't, whatever, but again, it takes some stuff out of the city hands, but actually enhances the city and its productivity on how to do things.
I think there's probably a direct correlation to the amount of tax base that's built to allow something like that, a project like that to happen. I mean, if you think about the wastewater treatment plant, there's some serious tax dollars that have to be filled in by more taxpayers, more businesses in this community. So I think first things first, you get more people, more businesses, more tax revenue coming in for the city. And then that becomes a real possibility.
Right, just a thought, let's get some land around town and you swap something out and.
I think it's great. It's aspirational, you know, to do that. I mean, talk to Jason, he dreams about a facility like that.
Yeah.
He does.
Yeah.
But you know, to add to what Jeff's saying here, what Jan's saying, when it comes right down to it, that one, there are tax benefits in that for a developer to make that land swap or the property, real estate swap in there to protect him down the road for other.
Just ideas to keep in our mind,
Yeah,
in the back of our
absolutely.
minds as down the road here, just.
That's something to think about.
Yeah, there's no bad ideas on here.
Rebecca, can I offer a suggestion? We're coming up on an hour and a half meeting and we still have quite a bit of agenda. Could we save the balance of the work plan to the October meeting?
Yes, we will go over local government, public service, and health and community identity then next month, if that's okay.
I think we want to hit these other items on our agenda yet before we
Yep.
leave, so.
These ones should be very quick for you. Budget update is that currently our request to council, according to Jason, is that we will have the CETA contract plus an additional $15,000 to assist us with, establishing a revolving loan fund. However, that $15,000 is only a request for the moment. By the time the budget is finalized, that may go down, it may not be there. We're not quite sure yet, so we're still gonna do our best to make sure that we can get ourselves something there, but this is obviously it's a long-term negotiation with the city, so for now, that's what we're looking at. For submitted grants and applications, I did submit a grant to Smith, the small town grant for the amount of $10,000, and that is for the purpose of community branding, that we should be hearing about sometime in October. And then the Taylor Rural Improvements Grant is the one that we use to apply for the walking path in the park. And for that one, we did request $25,000 to help pay for that. Again, we should be finding out in October if we were awarded or not for both of those. And then the one thing that I did.
You could just add the matching down to your notes too, then, were there matching grants into these grants or matching city dollars to those or not?
Yes. Yeah, we would have to pay for our portion of it, yes. The city
Do you know
would.
what that would be or not?
I will look it up and I can get it for you right after the meeting.
So it's documented in our notes, I guess, so we.
Yes,
I
yep,
think that's why.
Both of these are matching grants?
yes, yep. Now, the matches don't always need to come in the form of cash. They have what's called an in-kind match. So for example, we can say that we're gonna go ahead and charge for staff time to oversee the projects. So then you take that off of there. If we're gonna have our own maintenance department do the install, then we can go ahead and we can put that towards it. So there's a lot of different things that we're able to offset costs with, and that those matches won't actually have to be with city tax dollars. They'll just be with something that we've already got to in-kind to add to that project, so. I believe for the small town grant, the one for 10,000 for the community branding, I believe that one I have completely set up so that there wouldn't be any tax dollars being used on it at all. It would just be our in-kind services. The rural improvements grant, that one, I think because of the amount of concrete that's required, the city probably would have to use some of those parks and rec funds. Yep. So for that one, there would. And then in the back of your packets is, what is my schedule? I hope you all enjoy it. I just wanted to make sure that you guys kind of know during November, December, I disappear for about 2 weeks to Colorado each month, and I work remote. My boss is very lovely that way. For the green dates are dates that I know I will be in office. The blue are the days where I'm going to be in Colorado. However, I work from there, so I will be working remote and I'm completely available by phone or email all day those days. So all of those days that are blue, I'm still available to each and every one of you, just not in person. The yellow dates are the dates that I have off for holidays or driving. But as far as being in office the weeks that I'm gone, I do have dates that I can work remotely. I'm gonna be talking with Jason about these just to make sure that he's comfortable with everything ahead of time. Otherwise, I will also schedule some other dates when I'm in town to work maybe 2 days in office those weeks, just to be able to make sure that I'm offering those same hours available to the local businesses. But just kind of giving you guys a heads up. And then I also want to make sure that each of you are looking to see regarding November and December as to if we are going to be wanting to look at, obviously December's we're going to either need to cancel or reschedule because I'm guessing Christmas Eve y'all would like to be with your families. And then the other one, it's just 2 days before Thanksgiving, but I think that one we could still make work, but we can determine those next month. But I just wanted to make sure I brought it to each of your attention. And if there's nothing to work on those particular days, we don't have anything to actively work on, we may be able to cancel the December one. So there's that. And then the last thing that's in there for you guys is the ready information. So Jason and I were talking about this earlier today. And I just want to make sure you guys had some information about Ready and what it is. But they assist small businesses kind of in the same way that CETA can, but with some of the more broad projects. And they're able to assist with things like financing, site data, those kind of things. So it is a $2,500 annual? $3,500 annual fee. So that's something that if the city does decide to be involved in, currently it's Byron, Casson, Chatfield, Pine Island, Plainview, Rochester, and Stewartville that are engaged in it. And they really just kind of help out with focusing on the region when it comes to small business development. So it's something that the city's looking at being able to be a part of. And if it's something that the city was to go ahead and sign on to, it would be something that would probably come towards us to keep an eye on, because it is for economic development purposes. So it's kind of thing where all of us would be able to attend, keep our ears open and just finding some new connections and information.
Basically, it's just dues.
Yeah, exactly. So kind of like with League of Minnesota Cities. Yeah, essentially it's another group like that, but this one is very much more regionally towards people that are just surrounding Rochester.
How many cities are in that, you know?
Right now it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
There was a sheet in our packet last month about it, I think.
Yeah, I remember seeing it.
Community council.
Is it, just out of, well, I don't know, is it city council has to approve all that?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's not us, but I would just be very interesting to hear one of the smaller towns say, to spend that kind of money, what have they gained out of it? In other words, at what point of their EDA did they start with it? We're kind of new in everything else. And so did they wait 3-4 years and then kind of got into it? And then I'd be very interested then to say, what have they done for you, or when you spend that kind of money, what have you gained back? You know,
What was the payback?
what's the payback on spending that kind of money out? It might be very good money, but I don't know.
Right, so there is, I believe there is a benefit. Just a clarification, Rochester is not part of this community of councils. It's all outside Rochester. Yes, they're located in Rochester and they use the name, but their main purpose is to, everything is outside of Rochester, so, which is good, so. But I think it's this, it demonstrates to developers and investors that we're all part of this community with Byron and Stewartville. We all have a common goal of expanding our economic development, and it's more of a acknowledgement that Orinoco is just like Byron and Stewartville. Yes, we're smaller, but yes, we want to be involved with that perception of you're part of the area economic development, so.
You know, it's been around a while. How old is Randy? It's
I actually have that as
it's
the,
about 30 years old, isn't it?
yeah, something like that. I actually have that down as a question for myself to
It's
answer.
been around quite a while.
But we do have, in 4 of the different towns, we do have other CETA reps. So I actually will specifically ask if they could give me a little bit of a synopsis on what they feel like they've gained, and how it's benefited them.
That'd be great. I mean, let's have a little bit.
Rebecca.
Yeah.
I think one of the other great things that comes with it, as we saw, they offer different trainings and events. Like we went to this last month with the housing event down in Byron that was hosted there. And that was basically brought together a lot of the local CETA and EDA groups, as well as developers and things like that. So there's a vast networking opportunity, but it's something that would be open to you folks as well as EDA members to really get out there and meet with these other groups and organizations and get a better understanding from their end on a personal level as well. So they do provide that benefit from it.
So mostly just something for us to go ahead and consider, because it would be something that the EDA obviously would want to keep a good eye on, so. Outside of that, does anybody have anything else that they'd like to add to the agenda for the evening, or else I think we're ready?
Not, okay. Wait a second. A second. All in favor, signify by saying aye. We close at 8. 8-7. Aye. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Close. See you next month.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you guys. Appreciate it.
Thanks for coming.
Thanks, guys.
Ugh.